Okay, so I think we have begun the recording. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Burrough, and I'm the Customer Service Coordinator for Precedence EAP. And I'm here today at Scott Community College at the Belmont campus to talk about seasonal affective disorder and anxiety, because that's one of the focuses that's going on right now, is just giving students more information about anxiety and depression and ways that they can address it in their life and be aware of what those things can look like and how those experiences can show up. A specific type of depression and anxiety shows up around this time of year. And it tends to show up around those fall or winter months for many people, and it's called seasonal affective disorder. So it's often considered a type of depression, but it can have anxiety as well tie in. And in fact, it can exist in the summer months. And that's really where that anxiety shows up more often. But in any way it shows up, it's just something that it shows up in the system as a dysregulation. And there are certain risk factors that you want to be aware of. If you're somebody who thinks that you might deal with seasonal affective disorder, things to be aware of are gender. So women are more likely to experience seasonal affective disorder. Other diagnoses, if you already experienced depression or have experienced depression in the past, or have bipolar disorder, other diagnoses such as that can lead you to a higher likelihood of experiencing seasonal affective disorder. Also, your environment or location affects it. So if you live further away from the equator and you have less sun during those times of the year, when the days get shorter, that's something else that might influence whether or not you experience seasonal affective disorder. And if you have a family history of depression or anxiety, or even someone who you know in your family has experienced seasonal affective disorder, this might also indicate that you might be more likely to experience it. And these are all things to just be aware of, so that when you notice these things happening in yourself, that you don't just brush it off, that you address it as something that you might need to reach out to somebody to get help for. And it's important for us to reach out and get help. So when we need it, right? So things that you might want to be aware of, symptoms to be aware of, are if you notice increased sleeping or daytime drowsiness, specifically, I think around those times of year when the days are shorter, feeling that. Experiencing a loss of interest or just pleasure in activities. So you notice that you're starting to withdraw, or your moods are starting to change around things that you would normally have gotten, joy or pleasure from. If you're noticing that you're withdrawing from social experiences, if you have an increased sensitivity to different interactions and social settings that you don't normally have during other times of the year, if you have increased irritability or anxiety, if you notice that you're feeling more hopeless or more guilty, if you're feeling just harder on yourself in general, and it's hard to understand why it's happening, and it's happening around this time of year where there's been a seasonal change, it might be something to be aware of. Fatigue or low energy level, decreased sex drive, which also comes from that just need to withdraw, not wanting to be, in the same type of connection that's usually healthy for you. A decreased ability to focus or concentrate, or just trouble thinking clearly. Or if you're noticing that you are craving, sweets or carbohydrates, if you're kind of going to food more often, almost as a way for comforting yourself, because your body is feeling like it's more stressed out. It can lead to just imbalances in the way that we consume. And then that can also lead to weight gain if we're not moving as much, and we're having negative thoughts about ourselves, and we're not having our, healthy daily routines. Physical problems can also show up, such as headaches, And also, when you notice, if you've experienced this in the past and you just kind of brushed it off, and if you notice that it happens to you around the same time of year, it really is something that's worth reaching out for help. So just being aware of those things can make a world of difference, because a lot of times it can really just be recognizing that you have something going on and reaching out to somebody for help. And as soon as you start doing that, things can get better. So there are a few ways that seasonal affective disorder can be treated. Exposure to sunlight is, a big one. And of course, during these months, we all know sometimes we don't have a choice whether or not we get exposure to the sun, but sometimes even on those days when it's sunny and it's cold, it's good to just get out, even if the air is very brisk, to find some way to go for a short walk, to find some way to be near a window, be near a place where we can have exposure to the sunlight. But as we know, living in the Midwest, sometimes exposure to sunlight is very difficult to find. So there's also light therapy. There are full spectrum light bulbs that you can purchase, put inside your house. There are specific light therapy, devices that you can set up and turn on at the beginning of the day, and that can help your body and your mind wake up, because there's a specific way that your eyes receive that light from the sun, from that full spectrum light bulb, that turns on your brain, that wakes you up from your sleep. And so it helps you get back into that circadian rhythm that usually gets thrown out of whack when those days get shorter. And that's one of the reasons people experience seasonal affective disorder. There's also, of course, counseling, psychotherapy. There are many different types of therapeutic treatment out there. It's something that can be incredibly beneficial, because the thing is, a lot of times when we talk to somebody about it, they can give us tools to reroute the thoughts in our brain that are getting us into those places that are not positive for us, that are not helping us make choices to support ourselves. So psychotherapy can be one of the most positive things that you can do for yourself, as well as, of course, the other two. And I'm sure that getting the right amount of sleep, if possible, getting exercise, eating well, these are all things that can help. But therapy can be irreplaceable when it comes to really getting your mind back on track. When you can't do that on your own, a therapist is there. And I do want to say, we're going to talk about this later, but we do have a therapist here. I work for Precedence. We run the student assistant program, and we have someone on campus on the Scott, Muscatine, and Clinton campuses to see you. So her name is Stephanie Watson-Quintana, and she is able to meet with you and give you those tools. So you have that free through your student services at EICC. And so going to somebody and getting that help is super easy if you are an EICC student, because we have somebody on campus for you. Or if campus doesn't work, we can do telehealth or virtual appointments as well. So there are multiple options for you to get that support. And sometimes for those who have done all of these things and really do need that additional assistance, antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication can be incredibly helpful. So, there is nothing wrong with reaching out to those different resources. We have them for a reason. And it's something that when you start getting that treated, the faster you're going to have that turnaround, and you're going to be able to feel much better and healthier in your life. So other ways that you can help relieve symptoms during this time of year, or if you're noticing that stress, is remember not to take on too much during this time of year when you can get more easily overwhelmed. Make sure that you're managing your stresses in a healthy way for you at the capacity that you're at, and be compassionate with yourself around that. But also try to be with other people, connect with other people. It's really important for us when we're feeling like we, are not in a healthy place, to get with other people for support. And one of the ways that helps us is, it's called co-regulation. So our nervous system, when we get into a stressful place and we can't get out of it, we're having trouble self-regulating. But when we can get with other people who can support us, who can show us how to be another way in the world, it can lead us to co-regulate and find those places of homeostasis where we can fully show up in our lives. And really remember, you can do things that are just good for you. You know, don't put pressure on yourself to do a lot of stuff you don't want to do all the time. Make sure you're taking time to do things that make you feel better, that make you feel good, and really think about what those things are. And if you can't think about something off the top of your head, think about something that you would love to try. Starting a new hobby can be a great way to get through months where we can't get outside very often. Finding a hobby to do indoors, finding something that's going to interest your creativity, that's going to engage your mind and your body and even your spirit, that's going to be something that's going to help you. I think I mentioned before, regular exercise can really help. And also not setting those high expectations that, oh, I'm going to get ready right away. You know, expect that things can get better, but that they might be gradual and that there's no silver bullet. And so when we're talking about regular exercise, you know, maybe it doesn't have to be something you pressure yourself into doing in an extreme way. Maybe it is literally just doing a 5-minute walk or 10 or 20 minutes of stretching. There are so many different great apps where you can find workout opportunities or videos on YouTube where you can do that. And even though sometimes, you know, we don't want to do it, it's just, we will feel better little by little the more we invest in ourselves. So eating healthy, well-balanced meals, we were talking about how, you know, doing that can lower inflammation in the body. It can get us the nutrients that we need to feel supported. Staying away from alcohol and drugs is really beneficial. We all know that those things are hard on the system. And so when our body is feeling low or when we're not doing our best, putting more inflammation in our body and on our system is not going to benefit us in the long run. And especially in any, if you're ever experiencing any mental health issue, those two things are a lot of times used as a Band-Aid instead of allowing you to kind of meet what you have going head on, and it can make those issues worse. So definitely staying away from those things doesn't mean that you can never enjoy them. It just means, you know, specifically you don't want to have that be a Band-Aid for your life. And when I said enjoyed, I meant alcohol or obviously anything legal. Any drug that is not legal is something that is going to be much harder on your system and should be ridden from your life entirely. Delaying big decisions until your depression or any state of mental illness has lifted is really important, because you're not going to be able to think as clearly and you're not going to be able to make the decisions that are going to affect you best in the long run. And having more patience with yourself and focusing on the positives can be really, really helpful. Remember that you have a support system, reach out to that support system. Remember that your family, and even if you don't feel that you have a very strong support system, reach out to the people you do love and trust. So it doesn't mean that you have to go out and force yourself into social situations. You know, if that's not where you're comfortable, go to the people who are your safe spaces, the people who are going to create that space for you to feel comforted and feel supported, and let your family and friends help you. A simple journaling technique that we want to share with you today is the GLAD journaling technique. And so it has 4 components. We've all heard about how journaling can be so beneficial, and it is. It is truly beneficial. The pen to paper method is something that allows us to get our thoughts out instead of having them stay up in our head. So even if you're just journaling for the purpose of getting thoughts out on paper, that's an excellent practice that can help you when you're going through times of stress, or even just on a daily practice. But if you want to focus on shifting your mindset during a time when you notice you're suffering more from just like emotional dysregulation and thoughts that aren't benefiting you, the GLAD journaling technique can help you. And one of the first things that you want to do is you want to have gratitude in this journaling practice. You want to talk about things that you're thankful for, and it can truly be the smallest of things. I have a good friend who has a gratitude practice, and she says that one of the first things she puts, it's a warm, dry bed. So I have a bed that's warm. So I am in a warm house. I have a bed that's dry. And I have a place that I can sleep, right? So there are things that we take for granted in our life. And, not everybody has something as simple as things we take for granted every day, whether it's running water or whether it is a delicious breakfast or a caring community or friends and loved ones that we do have that we can reach out to, or even our health, is something that we often take for granted until something's going on with it. So being appreciative for the health that we do have is important too. L, so G stands for gratitude, L stands for learned, stating one thing that you learned that day. So recognizing whether it's something that you learned in class or whether it's something that you had as an insight about yourself. And it could be just from processing and recognizing, oh, I'm recognizing that I'm being aware of my emotions. I'm recognizing that I'm noticing that my thoughts are doing this, and I'm taking a moment to be compassionate with myself. It can be something new that you discover about another person or about something in your community. Anything that you gain in terms of learning, something you read on the news, it can be something that you gain from that day, whatever it is. A stands for accomplishment. So recognizing an accomplishment that you did, and that accomplishment might have been to give a presentation like I happen to be doing today, or it could be getting enough sleep the night before, or it could be making yourself a healthy meal, or getting out and going for a walk, or even just something as simple as getting dressed. It can be truly, sometimes we have trouble getting out of bed and getting dressed. I know there were lots of days in the pandemic when most of us didn't change out of our pajamas. And that was something that we took for granted, that we did every day, right? So recognizing those acts of self-care that we do for ourselves every day, and recognizing those as accomplishments and giving ourselves kind of appreciation for coming forward and getting that done. And then D stands for delight. So something that touched you, something that lifted you, something that brought you a laugh or a smile or joy. It could be a beautiful sight like a flower, or it could be listening to a bird singing. I know I woke up this morning and I heard the sound of rain, and that was delightful to me. And then I also got to hear birds singing as well. And it really did make me think of spring. And so it can be the most simple of things that bring you delight, but remembering that we have these experiences and then appreciating them actually allows us to be more and more aware of them. The more we focus on these positive things and recognize the way we grow and have supportive experiences every day allows us to recognize that they happen more often than we think. So to finish up, I wanted to focus a little bit on anxiety, as we were talking a little bit more about seasonal affective disorder. Anxiety is something that kind of, as on the other scale, there's depression and then there's anxiety, and just recognizing anxiety shows up as the body and mind's reaction to stressful, dangerous, or unfamiliar situations. So it can leave you in a sense of uneasiness or distress or dread. And when we have these feelings of stress in our life, they can be healthy, right? Stress is a healthy response of our body. But when this stress goes on in a chronic way, or when anxiety can get tied in and create it as an ongoing pattern, it actually leads us to not being able to regulate our nervous system and can result in a myriad of these unpleasant symptoms that are the manifestation of anxiety. So there are a number of psychological symptoms of anxiety: fearful anticipation or restlessness, so worry about something that's going to happen, which can lead you to feeling more restless or irritable. And it's kind of, I think you've heard of the fight or flight. So the restlessness is more of like, it can be both fight and or flight. Irritability is obviously more of a fight syndrome. Insomnia, we talked about fearful anticipation, but there's also just a worrying thought pattern that can get locked into place. And it can also look like intrusive thoughts. So when you have anxiety, your thought patterns, you're no longer really in control of the thought patterns that are going through your mind, because you are still in that state of stress. When our body goes into a state of stress, our cortisol levels are high. Our whole body is more focused on survival. So those thought processes we can get really caught up in them in our brain, and it can look like really intrusive, worrying thoughts that we can't control. And that can lead to poor concentration and a hypervigilance. It can also lead to feelings of doom. So if you're recognizing that you have those feelings of doom or feelings of dread, that is definitely a specific symptom of anxiety. And those can lead to, I'm sure you've heard of panic. So anxiety and panic disorder, they're different types of mental disorders, but they're very linked in that those panic symptoms are that body being kind of revved up to that place where it's expressing itself in a multitude of ways. So you can see from this picture here, there are lots of different physical anxiety symptoms that are related to the psychological symptoms. And a lot of people don't recognize that anxiety is very much a physical manifestation disease as much as a mental. So whereas depression, obviously we're on the other end of the spectrum, and we're talking more about how there's lethargy, a withdrawal, and kind of an inability to complete tasks because of low energy and lack of motivation. With physical anxiety, because you are being consumed in a way by your stress and your stressful thoughts, it can manifest in physical ways such as chest pain or shortness of breath, dry mouth, difficulty swallowing. Dizziness and lightheadedness are very connected, or nausea. It affects the vagus nerve, which really goes all the way, from our brainstem down all the way into our gut. So it can affect, that's that nausea and the diarrhea. Our whole nervous system, when it is out of balance, we can be sweaty or shivering. You can experience muscle tension, even tremors. And the tremors, and some of these symptoms, they can be really scary. You can really think something is going terribly wrong and you don't know why. And it's just your body trying to express essentially the hormones that go through your body when you're experiencing fight or flight. That's sustained and you don't have an ability to regulate. It can also look like fatigue or weakness, or like they said, jelly-like legs. If you just kind of feel like, you're it's almost like a feeling like your legs are asleep, almost a little bit, kind of somewhere. But you can also have muscle aches, headaches, numbness or tingling. All of those things can show up when your body is in that high state of feeling threatened. And so it's really important, of course, because those can be very difficult symptoms to manage on your own, to go to see a therapist, to talk about it, to really look into medications if you need help regulating, and that would be beneficial to you. And then, looking into complementary or alternative therapies can help you have long-term remission when you find coping skills and techniques to regulate your nervous system on your own. And that can allow you to, in time, if you need to go off medication doesn't have to be a lifetime experience, but it might be something you need to get back into a place of stasis so that you can start to gain some balance in your life and recognize that you can get back into that place. Breathing techniques are really, really helpful when dealing with anxiety. The 4-7-8 breathing technique is something we've passed out before. It's available in our counseling office. Essentially, it is breathing in for 4 counts, holding for 7 counts, and breathing out for 8 counts. So I don't want to take too much time because we're running up against the half hour, but This is a very simple technique, and breathing techniques themselves help regulate the nervous system. So this is one of those great techniques that helps to regulate the nervous system, to get it back into a place of centering. And it can be very helpful for people who have trouble falling asleep. So I highly recommend trying it or looking into other breathing techniques that may be beneficial to you. Sometimes the most simple technique is the easiest, putting a hand on your heart and a hand on your stomach, breathing in and out and feeling your stomach go in and out. This can be done at any time. The hands act as a centering tool for your body to have that sensation of support through touch. But then the sensation of the breath in and out, breathing itself can be very regulating, and you can find different counts to use, whether it's the 4, 7, 8 or 5 and 5 or 1 to 1 or 1 to 2 breathing. So 1 to 1 would be like 5 counts for an in breath, 5 counts for an out breath, or 1 to 2 breathing would be 5 counts for your in breath and 10 counts for your out breath. So there are different ways that you can find breathing exercises that can balance you, and you can do it just by putting your hand on your belly and focusing on your breath. So we've talked about a number of different things that you can do: journaling, spending time with friends, exercising, getting more positive affirmations and thoughts, working with a therapist, doing breathing exercises. There are so many different things you can do to support yourself, but a lot of times when you have been doing something on your own for so long, it's really helpful to get somebody's support. And like I said, that's what our student assistant program is for. Stephanie is there and is happy to talk to you about anything you have going on. So everyone gets sessions here. If you're a student at the college, it says it covers up to 6 sessions, but that is actually per issue. So you're really going to be able to see Stephanie as many times as you need. The only time you would be referred out is if she knew that you needed to get care from another venture that she couldn't give to you. But we want you to know we have resources and can find them for you, or we are here to support you in whatever way possible to find a balance in your life. And to schedule appointments with her, we do have our brochure, and the scheduling line number is 309-779-2273. My name, once again, is Stephanie Burrough, and I can answer additional questions you might have about these services. My information is also on that brochure, and I'm sure when you see this information posted that you can find, there's also links to it that are online, or Jill here will make sure that you have access to that information. So remember that there are always other resources out there. We do have a National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. If you call or text 988, there is somebody there. If you know that you're in that place of crisis, please reach out to someone who can support you. There are 24-hour crisis lines for Eastern Iowa. The number here is on the slide. We'll be providing these slides. And I'm sure that they will be made available to you in some form as well, or we'll make sure that you have these resources. But we hope that if you need the help, that you are going to reach out. And just thanks so much for taking some time to listen. You made it all the way to the end. Have a great day.